Around 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth was born. Nearly 3.8 billion years ago, the first forms of life appeared. And over billions of years, these forms of life would slowly evolve into the first hominids, our ancestors. Around 7 million years ago, a small hominin called Sahelanthropus chidensis lived in a world completely different from the one we know today. There were no roads, no homes, no cities, and no machines. The Earth was wild, unpredictable, and often dangerous. Survival was not comfortable. It was something you had to fight for. At first, those early hominins were not truly human in the way we think of humans today. They were small creatures trying to adapt to a harsh environment. They lived between the trees and the open land, always watching, always moving, always trying to stay alive. Their lives were shaped by hunger, fear, and the constant threat of predators. They did not have language as we know it. They could not write, build houses, or grow food. Their world was made of instinct and improvisation. They depended on whatever nature gave them. Fruits, roots, leaves, insects, and small animals were part of their diet. If they were lucky, they found enough to survive another day. If they were unlucky, they often died. In those early times, every change in the environment mattered. A dry season could make food scarce. A cold night could become deadly. A nearby predator could turn a quiet afternoon into a fight for life. There was no safety net, no medicine, no protection, just survival. But evolution was slowly shaping something extraordinary. Over millions of years, some of these early hominids began to walk on two legs more often. This may seem like a small shift, but it changed everything. Walking upright freed their hands, and once their hands were free, they could carry food, hold stones, pick up useful objects, and protect themselves more effectively. Bipedalism allowed our ancestors to travel longer distances. It helped them see farther over tall grass. It made it easier to move across open landscapes, and it also changed the body itself, slowly shaping the bones, muscles, and posture that would eventually give us that lower backache. Bipedalism was one of the first great turning points in human history. As time passed, their brains began to grow larger. This was another turning point. A bigger brain meant better memory, better problem solving, and better adaptation. It meant they could remember where food was found, recognize danger, and learn from experience. Intelligence began to change their lives, giving rise to the first simple tools. A sharp stone could cut meat, a broken rock could scrape hides, a stick could dig in the ground. Early humans would strike one rock against another with controlled force until a sharp edge appeared. By repeating this process, they learned how to detach flakes that created cutting surfaces. After preparation, the hides were dried and used as basic protection against cold and environmental exposure. They could be wrapped around the body, used as bedding, or carried as simple shelters. Over time, this simple use of animal skins became one of the earliest forms of clothing and insulation. These objects may not seem impressive now, but they were revolutionary at the time. They gave early humans an advantage no other animal had in the same way: the ability to shape the world around them. And yet, with all those improvements, life was still brutally hard. In the Paleolithic world, humans lived as hunters and gatherers. They had no farms. They had no permanent cities. They did not plant fields and wait for crops to grow. Instead, they followed the food. Their lives were mobile back then. When berries disappeared in one area, they moved. When animals migrated, they followed. When water became scarce, they searched for another source. Their lifestyle was built around movement, flexibility, and constant adaptation. They lived in small groups, usually families or bands, because that was the most practical way to survive. These groups depended on cooperation. One person alone could not do much, but together they could could hunt, gather, defend, and care for one another. Sharing became essential. Food had to be divided, knowledge had to be passed on, and danger had to be faced as a group. In a world like that, community was not a luxury. It was essential for survival. Their shelters were also simple. Sometimes they used caves. Sometimes they built rough shelters from branches, leaves, and animal hides. Other times they simply slept in the open when they had no better option. The nights were cold and dangerous, and predators moved silently in the dark. But then came one of the most important discoveries in human history: fire. At first, fire was terrifying. It came from lightning, from wildfires, from natural events that early humans could not control. It destroyed forests. It frightened animals. It seemed almost supernatural. However, humans are remarkable not because they never feel fear, but because they learn from it. They noticed that fire had power. It gave off warmth. It lit the darkness. It drove predators away. It transformed raw food into something easier to chew and safer to eat. It extended the day beyond sunset. It created a new center of life around which people could gather. Fire changed the rhythm of human existence. For the first time, night was no longer fully controlled by fear. Families could sit together in the glow of flames. Stories may have been shared. Knowledge may have been passed down. Bonds may have grown stronger around the warmth of a fire that burned through the dark. Over time, humans learned not only how to preserve fire, but how to make it. The earliest method most likely relied on friction, using simple tools made from wood. One of the oldest techniques was the hand drill. It worked in a very direct way. A straight stick was pressed against a dry wooden base and rotated quickly between the hands. This constant motion created friction, and friction slowly built up heat. At first, it only produced dust and smoke, but if the wood was dry enough and the pressure was steady, a small glowing ember would eventually appear. That ember marked a major leap in human independence. It meant fire was no longer something they only found. It was something they could create. As tools improved, hunting became more effective. Early humans learned to make spears. Later, they developed better spear points. They learned how to track animals, understand movement, and work together during hunts. A single hunter might not have been enough, but a coordinated group could bring down much larger prey. Instead of eating only what they found, humans could now actively pursue food. That made life more reliable, but also more dangerous. Hunting large animals required courage, planning, and teamwork. It was not just a matter of strength, it was a matter of strategy. Gathering remained just as important. In many places, women played a crucial role in collecting plants, nuts, seeds, fruits, and roots. It provided a steady source of nutrition. As they were nomads, their possessions had to remain simple. They could not carry much. Their tools were practical, portable, and handmade. Clothing was also basic at first, made from untanned hides. Around this time, adornments also began to appear. Bones, teeth, shells, and stones may have been worn as ornaments. These objects were not just decoration. They may have carried meaning, identity, or spiritual value. Even in ancient times, humans were not only concerned with surviving physically, they were also beginning to think symbolically. This was one of the most important differences between humans and other animals. Humans did not just survive, they gave meaning to the things around them. They saw patterns, stories, symbols, and purpose. They remembered the dead. They feared the unknown. They dreamed of things they could not yet see. Slowly, through language, gesture, sound, and memory, the human mind began to connect not only with the present, but with the past and future. Language may have started in simple forms: sounds, calls, signals, and repeated words tied to action. But once humans could communicate more effectively, everything became easier. Larger tribes could form. Danger could be warned about. Knowledge could be passed down more accurately. Children could learn faster, and culture could develop. Language was not just a tool for communication, it was a tool for civilization. As the Paleolithic age continued, humans spread across the earth. They adapted to different climates, different landscapes, and different challenges. Some lived in warmer regions, while others spread across the colder parts of Europe. They crossed the Red Sea in primitive boats. They followed the coast of Asia. Around 65,000 years ago, they reached Australia by sailing across stretches of open sea that no human had ever crossed before. Think about that. 65,000 years ago, someone slapped some logs together, fitted his big balls inside the boat, went out into the ocean, and reached a new continent without GPS, without a compass, and without any guarantee that land existed on the other side. That requires more than instinct. It requires imagination, the ability to visualize what cannot be seen or touched. Between 45,000 and 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens reached Europe and encountered the Neanderthals. For thousands of years, both species coexisted on the same continent, hunted the same animals, lived in the same regions, and, as we already know, at some point they interbred. And then, around the end of the last ice age, the world began to change again. The climate warmed, giant glaciers retreated, forests spread into new regions, animals migrated or disappeared, new environments opened up. The old ways of life were no longer the only ways. This period of transition would become known as the Mesolithic, the Middle Stone Age. This changed their daily lives. Near rivers, lakes, and coastlines, fishing became increasingly important. Humans made better fishing tools such as hooks, nets, and harpoons. They learned how to exploit aquatic resources with greater skill. In some regions, this provided a more stable food supply than large-scale hunting ever could. At the same time, humans began using smaller and more precise stone tools, often called microliths. These tiny tools could be combined with wood or bone to create more complex weapons and implements. Their technology was becoming more specialized, more efficient, and more adaptable. Mesolithic art became more focused on people rather than just animals. Scenes often showed groups hunting, moving, or interacting together. The images were simpler, but they started to tell clearer stories about human life. Burials also became more varied and personal during this period. Some graves included tools, food, or small objects placed with the dead. People started returning to the same rich seasonal areas. They began spending more time near reliable food sources. Some groups built semi-permanent shelters. Others formed stronger connections to specific territories. Humans were no longer only moving with the seasons. In some places, they were beginning to stay, and when people stay in one place longer, their lives also start to change. They started noticing the land more carefully. They knew where the animals traveled, where the plants grew, where the water flowed, and which areas were most useful in different seasons. This growing familiarity with a place slowly laid the groundwork for something far more transformative: agriculture. With agriculture came the greatest shift in the history of human lifestyle before civilization itself: the Neolithic. The New Stone Age was not simply another stage. It was a revolution. Human beings discovered that instead of only taking from nature, they could begin to shape it intentionally. They grew food. They tamed animals. They built settlements. They could live in one place, season after season, year after year. Instead of following food, humans could now make food appear where they lived. But farming was not easy. It required patience, effort, planning, and labor. Crops could fail, weather could destroy fields, pests could ruin harvests. Farming made life less mobile, but not less difficult. In fact, in many ways, it made life harder at first. People had to work longer and more consistently. The bones hold the story of their lives. The skeletons of the first farmers show people who were shorter than earlier hunter-gatherers. They had more signs of stress, more damage in the joints. Their backs show decompression, fucking up our spines once again. Their teeth often show decay from starchy diets, and their knees show damage from long hours of repetitive work. Women spent countless hours kneeling and grinding grain. The body adapted to the system, but it paid the price. They became tied to land. They had to protect fields, manage water, and wait for seasons to pass. But farming also brought something no hunter-gatherer lifestyle had ever fully provided: surplus. With surplus came storage. With storage came planning. With planning came permanence. People no longer had to move constantly. They could build houses made from mud, stone, wood, and later brick. Villages began to form. Communities became larger. Children grew up in the same place. Ancestors were buried nearby. The land was no longer just a root. It became home. However, a cultivated field does not produce instantly. It usually takes months. A single raid can destroy everything, and one flood could erase a season's yield. Agriculture creates something that is both valuable and vulnerable, a dangerous combination. Where there is storage, there is theft. Where there is theft, there is defense. Where there is defense, there is organization. Where there is organization, there is authority. And authority, once it exists, tends to stay. In southern Mesopotamia, the Tigris and Euphrates were fierce and unpredictable. They flooded, they dried, they shifted course. A person could not simply plant and hope. Water had to be managed, canals had to be built, and work had to be coordinated across many households. No single family could handle that alone. Someone had to supervise labor, harness the waters, and impose order. At first, the authority may have looked practical. Then it became normal, then unquestionable. By 3800 before Christ, in southern Mesopotamia, Uruk had grown into one of the largest cities in the world. Tens of thousands of people lived within its walls. Strangers packed together, sharing the same streets. For the first time, multitudes lived side by side without knowing one another. A new kind of life. It was in this city, Uruk, where the very first writings emerged, not to preserve poetry, not to tell myths, but to track, record, and tax the food and the work. See, modern archaeologists have found millions of identical clay bowls in Mesopotamian ruins. They are known as beveled rim bowls, and each bowl represented a portion. They were standard rations for people. Food was no longer simply gathered and eaten. It was distributed at scale. It was at this moment that the worker ceased to be independent, and that dependency was the engine of the new world. Cities were no longer mere places. They had become machines of survival built at scale. At the same time, spiritual life became more structured. Settled communities often developed rituals connected to fertility, harvest, seasons, birth, and death. When life depends on crops, rain, and animals, the world can feel deeply mysterious. Humans tried to understand that mystery through symbols, ceremonies, and shared beliefs. Over time, those beliefs became more organized and influential, eventually giving rise to a fusion between divine authority and political power. By the time of ancient Egypt, that fusion took its ultimate form, the pharaoh. The pharaoh was not just a man sitting on a throne. He was divine order made human. He was the bridge between the gods and the world below. He was the reason the Nile rose on time, the reason the land stayed fertile, the reason chaos did not return. This was not just propaganda. It was a way to solve a political problem. If the ruler is sacred, then disobeying him is not just rebellion. It is blasphemy, and that changes everything. Suddenly, the state is no longer simply a machine of labor. It becomes a cosmic structure. By this time, human lifestyle had changed beyond recognition compared to the earliest hominins. And if we look today, some of us have unbelievable levels of abundance. Smartphones, internet, air travel, and nearly unlimited access to food and water on demand. Each of these things is beyond the wildest dreams of any of our ancestors. Things we take for granted in our everyday lives. What began as a desperate fight for survival slowly became something much greater. The farms, the villages, the alliances, the betrayals, the trade routes, the armies, the kingdoms, the religions, the nations, the wars, the machines, the skyscrapers, the computers, the satellites, the airplanes, and the first footprint on the moon. All of these things stretch beyond what any early hominin could even grasp.